You are now tuned into the Anonymous Source Podcast.
Welcome back, everybody, to Anonymous Source Podcast. I'm your host, Big Dan. I know it's been a while, been a little hiatus, but I didn't want to start season 2 unless I dropped a bomb. And today I got a bomb. Our guest today is Karen Quinones Miller, nationally best-selling author, whose life has been eventful as her novels. A Harlem native, served in the Navy, right?
Yep.
Served in the Navy, and then launched a successful career as a journalist here, actually, at the Philadelphia Inquirer.
Yeah, 7 years.
7 years.
10 years.
10 years.
10 years.
So she migrated from Harlem to Philly. Acclaimed author of the title Satin Doll, I'm Telling, and many other novels, especially the novel we're going to talk about today.
Not a novel. This is true crime. Everything in the book is true.
See, I'm getting checked already. Right here today, a true story of a legend, Harlem legend, the only Godfather of Harlem, Bumpy Johnson. So everybody give it up for Karen Quinones Miller. Thank you for coming.
It is my pleasure, Dan.
I've been trying to get this done for a year, but I'm glad we're doing it now while I got the momentum and people is looking for it. Because I've always been into, Bumpy is that guy when it comes to street legends.
Bumpy is definitely that guy.
And you've been fortunate enough to know Bumpy personally.
Yes.
To be friends with his wife.
Yes.
And to pen this book. Go get it. I'm gonna put the link in the bio. Great book. Great book. So before we get into to Bumpy, talk about Harlem. How was it living in Harlem?
Man, it was great. It was wonderful. And the thing is nobody can know who wasn't there then, because Harlem has changed so much, you know. But back in the 60s when I was growing up, Harlem was the shit, okay? There was a sense of community. There was crime, don't get me wrong, there was crime. But, you know, most of the gangsters, quote unquote, who, you know, dealt in Harlem, they gave back to Harlem, you know, so that on Thanksgiving, there was no such thing as somebody who didn't have enough money to get a turkey, because there was like Bumpy and then later Nicky Barnes and Jazz and them, you know, would give out, excuse me, turkeys on St. Nicholas Avenue. And everybody that couldn't afford a turkey before knew that they could go the Wednesday before Thanksgiving and pick up a turkey. You know, it was a real sense of community. You know, the Black Panther movement, people think it came out of Oakland. It came out of New York first. Specifically, it came out of Harlem, you know, with Lloyd Weaver and Max Stanford and them, you know, and then it moved on to California. And Huey Newton. The reason why people think Huey Newton was the one that started it and that it came out of Oakland is because Huey Newton was the first one that did things that would catch the eye of the media, like going into the Capitol in Sacramento with guns and rifles strapped on their back. Because originally the Black Panthers was supposed to be a covert type of a group, right? So it came out of Harlem. Everything came out of Harlem. There was a time when you could mail a letter to somebody and just put, you know, 125 West 117th Street, Harlem, USA. You didn't have to put a zip code or anything. You know, you could just put down Harlem, USA. It was black. That's the best way to describe Harlem.
Yeah, I see it. I see it for
black.
Like Dapper Dan and all of them. All of them say the same exact thing. Like the old Harlem is it was beautiful.
It truly was.
Beautiful. Yeah, and before like the guns and all the real rough gangsters, the numbers game was the game. The lottery numbers. The lottery numbers before the heroin, or it was like
no, the numbers was always there.
It was just always there.
The numbers started back in the late 1800s, believe it or not.
Oh,
yeah, with I can't think of any of the names. Willie, excuse me, Willie Enriquez. What's his name? That was Casper Holstein.
Okay.
Which is a very Jewish name, but was black. He was West Indian, specifically from the Virgin Islands.
Yeah.
And he was like the king of numbers. And people didn't even understand what the numbers were until Casper Holstein was kidnapped.
Ah.
He was kidnapped by 3 people from the Dutch Schultz gang. Okay? Because Dutch Schultz didn't know anything about numbers. Nobody knew anything about numbers. It was a Harlem secret. It had pockets in Brooklyn, but the numbers were a Harlem secret. Yeah. But then when Casper Holstein got kidnapped in like 1929, it made the New York Times.
And that's how they found out.
And that's how they found out. Because they were holding him for something like $25,000 ransom. And this was done.
That's like $1 million.
Right, but wait a minute. This was done on a Friday night. Okay? So when his people said, okay, we could come up with the $25,000, they were like, how you gonna come up with $25,000 on a Friday night?
Banks is closed.
Right. It went up to $100,000 then. Okay, because they were like, yeah, because we know you got it.
You got it.
We don't know how you got it, but you got it. Okay, and they paid the ransom, and since then, they knew how much money was going through the numbers game.
And that's how they all try to go take over Harlem.
Judge Schultz did. He came and he grabbed the game. He, took hold of most of the Harlem numbers people, threatened them, and they all gave in.
Yeah.
Except for one woman, Madam Stephanie St. Clair. She was the queen of numbers. They called her Queenie. Okay, and that's how. Well, we're going to get into Bumpy now.
Yeah.
I hope you don't mind.
No. But I set it up just like that for you.
Okay. Bumpy came into Harlem like in the 1920s. Okay, and he was living with a sister up over near the Dunbar. Oh. The Dunbar is 150th Street and 7th Avenue. So he was living with a sister over there, one of his older sisters. But what he did was he formed a gang, okay, and the gang was made up of people who had tried to rob him and found out the hard way that Bumpy was not a good person to try to rob. Yeah. He was like in his teens at this point. He was 16 or 17 years old. So then he formed this gang, and what they would do is they offered protection to number runners, okay? Because some of the number runners were getting robbed, carrying big money before they got to the banks. So there's a guy named Wilfred Brunner who is now in the Baseball Hall of Fame, who was a big-time numbers banker. There's the players, the runners, and then there's the banker.
Yeah.
Okay, he was a big-time banker. And he had hired Bumpy and his crew for protection. So a cop ran up on Brunner. Bumpy dealt with the cop. He was holding the cop's hand so he couldn't reach the gun with one hand and punching him with the other, And then, other cops came. Bumpy was arrested. Bumpy and one of his friends was arrested. But he was out within days because, of course, Brunner was going to get him out. Yeah. But that made Bumpy's reputation. Yeah. Because people realized, the other number operators and bankers knew that Bumpy would go down for them. He wasn't going to just like chicken out because the police came.
Stood up to him.
Right, exactly. And that's how Madam Stephanie St. Clair got to know Bumpy.
That's how I got to know.
Okay. So, am I talking too much?
No, you perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. So, unfortunately, Bumpy went to jail, went to prison because there was a guy who had decided, I'm trying to remember his name. Anyway, if I remember his name later, I'll just fill it in, okay? But he and Bumpy got into it, and he stabbed Bumpy. So, of course, Bumpy went to town on him, stabbed and all. And Madam St. Clair was without Bumpy. Harlem was without Bumpy for like 5 years.
Wow. Oh, yeah. He went to Alcatraz.
Yes.
They said he was,
no. This was before Alcatraz. This was before Alcatraz.
Oh, okay.
This is in the late 1920s.
Oh, this is
okay.
Yeah.
So meanwhile, Helstein is kidnapped. Dutch Schultz gets into the numbers games. He buys out, which means he beat up all of the number bankers and made sure that the bank was going to him. Okay. Madam Stephanie St. Clair wouldn't capitulate. And they dogged her runners and everything, to the point where one time she had to hide in a coal bin. People nowadays don't know what a coal bin is, but it used to be that if you wanted heat, you needed coal to heat your furnace. Yeah. Right, exactly. And you know how dirty coal is. Well, and Madam St. Clair was one of these truly fine women, very refined, very sophisticated, and she had to hide in a soul bin. So they thought after that she would
crumble.
Right. And Bub Hewlett, who was, some people consider him even Bumpy's mentor. But Bumpy and Bub had run into a problem. And Bub was like, you're a young lion. I kind of like you, And so what he would do when he had too many offers, he would give Bumpy some, protection offers. He'd give Bumpy some business. And Bub Hewlett, everybody was afraid of Bub Hewlett. He had went to Queenie, as they affectionately called Madam Stephanie St. Clair, and said, Dutch is not messing around with you anymore. You better go ahead and give him your bank. But see, Madam Queen knew one thing that Bub didn't know. Bumpy was getting out in a few days. Right, okay. So, and Bumpy was always, he was what they used to call back in the day a race man. A race man is someone who only dealt with black people.
Gotcha.
It was like black against anything else. White with money, with a lot of money, with a whole bunch of money. Yeah, but I'm still going with the poor black man, okay? That was Bumpy. So when Bumpy got out, Madam Queen immediately called for him, and he came and she told him what was going on. And he was like, okay, I can't do this by myself. I can do this, but I can't do this by myself. I'm gonna need 4 men and money for guns. I got the 4 men, you gotta pay them. And you gotta pay for the guns. Well, Queenie had money, because remember, she wasn't turning over her bank. So she was like, you got this. Bumpy was like, all right. So Bumpy went out with 4 guys and another guy, Finley Hoskins. Finley Hoskins, his only duty was to be the resource man. Where to get the guns. Finley would get the guns that they bought. Find out where Dutch Schultz's people are. Finley would find out. So Finley was, right. Yes, exactly. I got to tell you a story about Finley when we're finished, because he tripped me out, okay? He tripped me. I mean, Finley was the guy that when cable came out, cable TV came out, everybody in Harlem, of course, wanted cable TV, of course. But Finley caught a cable guy come out of somebody's apartment, and he said, okay, well, cable would cost me $60 a month. I'll give you $150 right now, and you give me free cable. Yeah, he had free cable for 10 years. That's how Finley was. That's how Finley was.
Find a way.
When it comes to money, he would be the one to find a way. He's the one that set up card games over in the Harlem State, at the Teresa Hotel, which was a big deal in Harlem back then. 125th Street and 7th Avenue. They call it Adam Clayton Powell Boulevard now. Yeah. But anyway, I digress. So Finley was the homework man, the resource man, okay? And Bumpy and his 4 men went up against Dutch Schultz and his whole gang. And they were kicking behind, okay? They were kicking ass. They were seriously kicking ass. I mean, there were buildings bombed, you know, and, you know, he had, you know, and Harlem Hospital was on 135th Street and Lenox Avenue. And what they would do is if someone was hurt, if they had hurt him but didn't kill him, and they didn't want him dead, what they would do is, on the sidewalk. On the side. To the point where Harlem Hospital had gurneys in the lobby to pick up the guys that Bumpy was, you know, bumping off, you know, or not bumping off, because he would not take the white guys that he hurt to them, but he would take the black guys that he hurt to them. Okay, so I mean, the war, the gang war, Bumpy and his gang, which had no name except Bumpy and his gang, and the Dutch Schultz gang were kind of like at a standstill. And then Dutch Schultz was killed. He was knocked off by Lucky Luciano.
By Lucky,
Okay, so Lucky thought that he was then going to pick up Dutch Schultz's.
Wherever Dutch left off at.
Right, right. So Lucky and Bumpy had a meeting, okay? And Bumpy knew he couldn't go up against Lucky Luciano. Lucky Luciano was what they used to call the capo di capo. You know, he was all of mafia. He was the head of the 5 mafia gangs in New York. You know, there was no way that Bumpy...
too many connections.
Too many connections, too many men.
Yeah.
You know, too many men. But Bumpy cut a deal. All of the bankers that had capitulated to Dutch Schultz, Lucky could have them. But anybody who stood up to Dutch or who had run away, you know, to other countries in order to avoid having a fight with Dutch, all of those people were Bumpy's people. And Dutch and Lucky Luciano couldn't touch them. So Harlem had a victory parade, you know, celebrating that Harlem was free again. You know, the numbers game was free again. You know, but that's how Bumpy was. You know, he looked out for those who had looked out for him. And if you had given up, you know, he wasn't against you, but he wasn't for you. You know, Bumpy was like, you know, my people are my people. Good heart. Good heart. He was a gangster with a wonderful heart. I mean, he was the one that if he saw people being evicted, you know, the marshals were coming and putting their furniture out on the street, Bumpy would grab the tenant and say, how much money do you need to pay it off? And he would pay it. You know, even if he didn't know the person. You know, I mean, I can remember Bumpy having block parties for people, you know, kids for their birthday. Oh, kids love Bumpy, and Bumpy loved kids. If you got an A on your report card, you knew to hurry up and find Bumpy.
Got a treat for you.
Yes, you had ice cream, you know, so he would have a whole ice cream parlor waiting for the kids to bring their A's home from their report cards. And that's how I actually met Bumpy.
So that's how you met him?
Mm-hmm. It wasn't that I had an A on the report card. Let me say, okay, this is not really going off on a tangent, but back then, the men who had banks were called kings. And the women that had banks, very few of them, by the way, were called queens. But you wouldn't say Queen Stephanie St. Clair, you would say Madam Stephanie St. Clair. But since Stephanie St. Clair was such a big time, they used to call her Madam Queen.
Madam Queen.
So that's why they would call her Queenie. But because she was the queen, she was. But
so basically, that's what Trump is trying to do now: call him king instead of president.
Man, he is such a punk.
He's been watching too many Bumpy documentaries.
Yeah, exactly. He's one of the people, but as a kid, we would have beat him up.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, because you trying to make like you all this and you all this, and you know, in Harlem, we can smell
Yeah, trying to be a big bad
right,
bully.
you know, you just
Really-
get beat up on general principle. You didn't even have to do anything. GP, we beating you up, okay?
Absolutely.
Yeah, Trump would not have lasted long in Harlem at all, man.
He'd be out of here.
Yes.
Harlem don't play.
Harlem doesn't
Harlem
play.
don't play. And
But my mother was a friend with a numbers banker,
Okay.
who we simply called Madame, you know. And she was a banker, but she was actually backed up by Bumpy.
Okay.
Okay. And so I was 8 years old, and going into the 4th grade. And I got picked to be one of 3 people from Harlem to go to this white school on the Upper West Side. Well, I didn't want to go, you know, because I knew it was going to be a whole bunch of white people.
Yeah.
You know, and I had been in Harlem all my life, you know. But anyway, Madam, when she found out from my mother, you know, my success, academic success, she said, "Oh, well, we have to reward KK. Let her come out with me," you know. So I thought that we were going to be going to candy shops, ice cream shops. Nope. Madam had this big, beautiful black Cadillac. For a woman to have a Cadillac back in the early 60s, that was
Boss.
something. That was simply boss.
That meant boss.
But what she was doing is she was picking up from her spots, leaving me in the car with the windows rolled up.
While she making a run.
With no air conditioning. Because, you know, air conditioner pulls off your gas.
Yeah.
I'm sweating and whatnot. I was so pissed. But her last stop, she let me come in. Well, it was a big, beautiful apartment. Excuse me, I have to take a sip of
No,
water.
go ahead. We got plenty of time.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry, I talk so much.
Oh, no, listen. These are stories that was made for a lot of talking.
Okay. I'm glad you said that. So this last stop, we pulled up to a big apartment building and went into this beautiful big apartment, high ceilings, chandeliers and whatnot. And the guy that opened the door was this big, brawny guy, you know, with a derby that was too small. It kind of looked like...
They make nothing.
Right, exactly. And he was like, "Come on in," you know. And so Madam had me sit in the living room and she went in the back. And the guys, it was 4 guys, they were playing cards and everything, cursing and all that, you know. I'm sitting on the couch, little KK sitting on the couch, wondering when we gonna come, you know. Well, this apartment had air conditioning though.
Oh, so you was cool.
So I was cool, but just wondering, you know, what the hell was going on and when I could go home. So I could hear yelling and Madam was saying, "But it's okay, but it's okay." And the guy was like, "It is not okay," you know. And then, you know, about a half hour, 45 minutes, Madam comes walking out of the room and the voice is coming, you know, after her. And she was like, "But I'm telling you, it won't happen again." And he was like, "It better not happen again because I'm telling..." And then he saw me and he said, "Well, hello." And I said, "Hi." And Madam says, "KK, don't say hi, say hello to Mr. Johnson." "Hello, Mr. Johnson." And he was like, well, how nice to see you." And then Madam, now when I realize it's a setup.
Yeah.
Because Madam is saying, "Well, you know what? I brought her because would you believe she did so well in school that she's being sent over to the Upper West Side for the IGC, Intellectually Gifted Children program?" And Bumpy was like, "Really?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well, Miss KK, we have to do something to reward you, don't we?" And I didn't know what to say, so Madam said, "KK, say yes to Mr. Johnson." And I said, "Yes, Mr. Johnson." So he said, "How about some ice cream?" What 8-year-old didn't want ice cream, okay? So we sit down at this big dining room table, and it's him. He loved vanilla ice cream. He loved vanilla ice cream, you know. And I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at the ice cream, taking a little bit. He's like, "Don't you like the ice cream?" And I said, "I like chocolate." And Madam said, KK, don't say that. And Mr. Bumpy said, no, it's okay. He sent the men out to go get chocolate ice cream, you know. And then after that, anytime Madam was going to Bumpy's house, apartment, she would come get me. She would drive past and get me. And I mean, Bumpy, he was so cool. He always took the time out to talk to me. He found out that I liked Langston Hughes. He said, well, I know Langston Hughes. I said, you do? He said, yeah, I got to arrange for him to come over to meet you sometime. And I was like, oh, that would be so nice. And he had a picture of Shirley Temple. I didn't know why he had a picture of Shirley Temple. But it turned out that he was good friends with Bill Bojangles Robinson, who had done a picture with Shirley Temple. And after that, Shirley always made sure that, Bill Robinson was cool. So anyway, Bojangles gave him the picture, he kept it. But I mean, he just talked to me about everything. And then one day, he said, so this is now getting towards September. So school was closed. So he was like, are you excited about going to the new school? I said, no, I don't want to go. And he said, well, why? And I said, because, that's every 8-year-old's answer to everything, because, And he said, well, because what? And even though he was an adult, I decided to tell him the truth.
Yeah.
I said, because they're going to make fun of me because of my clothes, because I don't have any new clothes. And Bumpy was like, well, you don't go to school, as a fashion show, you go to learn. And I was like, and then he broke down, listen, we need smart people like you to learn so that you can help all of the other black people, and I was like, okay. Well, a couple of weeks later, he was picked up again, by the police. But in late August, there was a knock on the door about 10 o'clock at night. My bedtime, all the kids' bedtime was 9, but you could hear it. And my mom opened the door, and there was 2 black guys, and they gave her an envelope. And in the envelope was 4 $100 bills.
Oh, man. It's a lot of money back then.
Man, that was enough money for school clothes for me for a year, for my twin sister and my older brother, And it was from Bumpy Johnson, So in a way, I went a lot further in school and all of that.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I would have if it hadn't been for Bumpy. Because I was dead set. I was not going to go to that school, So he was instrumental. I always say he was instrumental to me in my education.
So was Langston Hughes a reason why you got into writing?
Yeah. I wanted to write a mixture between Langston Hughes and Mark Twain.
Got it.
And I'll tell you why. Because Langston Hughes wrote, and he lived in Harlem too, by the way. I'm just going to mention that. I'm just going to mention that. But he was one of those people whose writing, you could understand it if you were 7 years old or if you were 70 years old. For 7 years old, it wasn't much of a reach. And for 70 years old, it wasn't much of a descent. He wrote like people talked.
Absolutely.
And
you got different perspectives of it as you get older.
Right,
You see it one way, then you get older, you see it another way.
And he was one of those writers, you could read his book 3, 4, 50 times and, not be bored.
Yeah.
Because it was one of those books that you always want to go back and, let me read this again. Mm-hmm. So you did get all of those perspectives. I'm glad you brought that out. Yeah. But yeah, so, Bumpy Johnson, but it wasn't just me. I mean, and that was just a little thing.
Yeah.
That was just a little thing. But he did that for.
But there's a lot if he's doing that for a lot of kids.
He did. There was a guy named Wally Nottage. I had the opportunity to speak to him when I was writing about Bumpy, and he was one of the number runners for Bumpy. Bumpy was banking by this time, and he would not let Wally get too entrenched into the numbers game, even though Wally wanted to, because Wally was smart and everything, And Bumpy was like, nah, we got to send you to school. You're going to be something, And he sent Wally to school and to college and everything. Well, Lynn Nottage, which some of your people might know who she is. She's now a very famous film producer. And she's, Wally's daughter, setting Wally up for success, set his family up for success.
Planted the seed.
Right, exactly. And, if you were good at basketball, he didn't want you in the streets. He wanted you to go to college so you could get drafted. He was just...
That's the problem with the older guys now. They don't do that no more.
No, they don't.
When you recognize the talent, like, look, we don't need you trying to do both.
Right.
We got you. Stay focused and get out of here.
Yeah. Now it's like if you got a talent for counting, they want you counting their money.
They want you.
If you had a gift of gab, they want you selling their product. But not Bumpy, not at all. He wanted people to make something of themselves. He was just cool. He was a gangster. Like John Clark, Dr. John Henrik Clark. Okay, famous historian. He died a few years back. But when I was talking to him about Bumpy, and I was telling him that, okay, so now I'm in my 30s, okay, and I'm quote unquote out of the streets. Yeah. I've made it, I'm a journalist with one of the 10 major newspapers in the country. And I was, oh, by the way, Dr. John Henry Clark also lives in Harlem, okay? Just saying.
No, look, everybody from Harlem is the same way.
Okay, yes.
And, I love Harlem. I got affiliations with Harlem. I used to always be on 145th and Broadway.
Okay. Yeah, it was a big Chinese restaurant we used to go to over there.
Go to M&G's. Where else were we going at? They shut M&G's down. I was mad. That was our late night spot. What's it? Sylvia's. BBQs up on the upper all the way up near the basketball courts.
Rutgers.
Yeah. I'll be all
that's
around.
That's down where the Dunbar is, where I was talking about. Yeah, that's where the Dunbar is. Yeah.
Yeah, I love Harlem. Harlem's like my second home for like 2002 to 2006.
It was turning by then. It was turning by then. It hadn't fully turned, but you could see that it was. It was beginning. The gentrification was beginning. I blame. That's right. I blame Bill Clinton for that.
I blame Bill for everything.
Yeah. Well, what he did was he put his office up on 125th Street after he came out of the presidency. So then all these white people were like, wow, I want to be, But before that, we had no problem. There was a bar that I loved called the Lenox Lounge. It's famous now. It's in Harlem. Yeah. Near 125th Street and Lenox, Malcolm X Boulevard now. Yeah. But there was this Japanese TV crew who were doing interviews of people, and someone had pointed out that I was a famous author, not so famous, but anyway. So they said, well, could they talk to me? And I was like, sure. I thought they were going to talk about my books or ask me about my books. But they wanted to talk about Harlem and how did I feel about the white people moving into Harlem. Let me say, in my defense, right now, that I was a bit inebriated at this point, okay? So I said, well, I figure we need to get rid of him, and we can. And they were like, well, what do you mean? I said, all we need is one big riot, and the asses will be out of here in no time. And the people were like, oh, no, she didn't say it. But, but
that's how they felt, man.
But that's the truth. Yeah. I'm telling you, that's how the Harlem Renaissance ended.
That's how the whole Harlem felt.
Exactly. Anytime the white folks were moving too close to Harlem, there was a riot and they were gone, okay?
You'd have been canceled by now.
Yeah, exactly.
They were like, she said what? Cancel that lady.
Well, years later, I would say 8 or 9 years later, I was watching TV and they showed a clip and they put that on. And I was like, oh my God. Because it was a Japanese TV crew. I thought it was going to be in Japan. Oh God.
People try to find anything.
Yeah.
But I feel like the people that feel like that, and I understand why they feel like that, is like we went backwards
We did.
trying to mingle.
Well, see, I have to admit, I'm a segregationist. I am not for integration.
Yeah.
Because anytime we integrate, it's integrating one way.
Yeah.
You know, we go and buy their stuff. We go and see their movies. We go to their banks and get life insurance from them. And they don't do it for us.
Yeah.
They won't go to black banks. They
At
won't
all.
get black life insurance, you know. So, I mean, so many places have died. What's this place in South Jersey that everybody used to go to? Gosh.
Not the Tweeter Center. The outdoor.
No,
place?
it was a town.
Lindenwold?
No, it's right near Lindenwold. And see, that's the thing. It's not even famous anymore.
Yeah.
Camille, do you remember the name of the place? Oh, Camille's gone.
She left.
But anyway, if you could, look it up. Or I wrote about it, so it's somewhere. But it was a township. It was a black township, okay? It had a club, the High Top Club. People from Philly used to go there every summer to get the coldest beer in town. And it was just, it was near the beach, So that was during segregation. They had their own life insurance companies, their own banks, so that if you're behind in your mortgage, you could go to the banker man to man and say, look, I'm out of a job, but my unemployment is going to hit in 2 weeks. And the banker, man to man, would say, all right, but pay up.
Yeah, you got
to pay up.
2 weeks.
Right, exactly. But you could actually go talk to the banker.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and all of the black entertainers would go there. Red Fox would go there. LaWanda Page would go there. Sammy Davis Jr. would go there. It was on the Chitlin circuit. Have you heard of the Chitlin circuit? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It was on the Chitlin circuit. So all of Luetta's High Top is what the place was called. So it was a self-sustaining town.
Yeah.
Right. Then integration hit. And black people could go to any beach. They could go to clubs they couldn't go into before. They could get life insurance and bank wherever they wanted. Lawnside, that's the name of the place.
Lawnside,
yes,
New Jersey.
Lawnside. Okay. Well, Lawnside died because nobody was spending their money in the township. So they had
running.
Right. And they weren't coming to Lawnside to go to their clubs.
Yeah.
The black entertainers stopped because nobody was going there anymore. You could see Red Fox over in Atlantic City before. You didn't have to go to the Chicken Bones Beach.
Yeah.
So I'm for segregation. Because integration only goes one way. They never come to our stuff. We're always so happy to be going to, I can go into this white place. I can go into this white supermarket and shop.
I've seen a ex-Negro League basketball player, and he said it, a baseball player. He was like, man, we were so hyped to go to these white restaurants and they eat all this unseasoned food.
Right, exactly. And no hot sauce. And they thinking Tabasco sauce is the same thing. No.
Yeah, but we're so damaged as a people. We could never even get that, because we can't. We done made it to where you gotta pick one or the other. You can't like Kobe and LeBron. You can't like Jordan and Magic. Like, you gotta pick one. Like, why can't I like both of them?
Right, exactly. I just had this argument with someone about LeBron the other day. It's like, well, I'm not saying he's better than Kobe, but I'm not saying Kobe's better than him. I like both of them. Yeah. Why can't I like both of them?
And we don't do that do it. You don't see them people talk about who better, Aerosmith or Guns N' Roses, or they're all great.
Madison Square Garden can put a rock and roll group in there and sell out the whole garden, even though nobody's ever heard of them outside of they would not be able to fill up even the Felt Forum, which is a smaller venue, but it's attached to the Madison. The black groups would have to go to Felt Forum, and they would sell out the Felt Forum, but they couldn't sell out the Madison Square Garden. Farrakhan did though. Yeah, Farrakhan did. But yeah, I mean that's just the way it is, and people get upset at me when I tell them, well, I am for segregation.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm not saying we have to hate white people. Segregation has nothing to do, with white people. Segregation has a lot to do with hate. They didn't want to be around us. You know, but you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's like we could live separate from each other and still support each other. Hey, how you doing? You know, we can go on joint projects, but
and people, we didn't realize it. They didn't want us around because they knew how smart we was. And how talented we was. But no, we need to keep them over there. But we still wanted to come. It's just like the same with the kids. Don't touch that stove. And you still want to.
You got to touch it just to find out the hard way.
Just to find out the hard way.
Yeah.
And we've been finding out the hard way ever since.
I mean, we had such challenge. I remember when I was just started at the Philadelphia Inquirer, I did a story about, where's this? The drug spot in Philadelphia.
Kensington?
In Kensington, okay. Yeah. And the police were doing, they tipped the reporters off ahead of time. Yeah. So they were doing this roundup. So, you know, the reporters knew, so we were all out there and everything. And the reporters were all talking to the police and getting theirs. And I'm looking at the guys that they arrested sitting on the sidewalk. So I sat on the sidewalk. And I was talking to them, you know, and I got a hell of a story, you know, and it was like, it broke my heart. Because here's this thing, these kids, what they would do, they would all get their product. We talk about heroin. Yeah. I know a lot about different drugs. I'm not going to say how, okay? I just have to know.
You set yourself up. We're going to go from the Kensington heroin, and then we're going to get back to the Harlem.
We're going to get back to the Harlem heroin. I hope you don't mind if I, okay,
no.
All right, okay. But what these kids would do is they would have their products, you know, small packets, and everybody had their own label, you know, Blue Liberty or Blue Magic or Red Devil or whatever, right? On their packages. And they would get up at dawn and they would take their packages and throw it up in the streets for people to get. Well, the people who was getting them was the old heroin heads, the old junkies, okay? Because they knew that the kids were going to do this. Yeah. Because what the junkies would then stay around, the old junkies would stick around for the rest of the day hoping for handouts. So when people came driving by, they would ask the old junkies, well, who had the best stuff?
The best one.
And so they would tell them.
Like this stamp right here.
So what I'm saying, it broke my heart because these black kids that were doing this, they were made for Madison Avenue.
Yeah.
These were public relations men, you know? But all they could get was a job throwing up packages of dope.
Yeah.
You know? So, yeah, you know. But anyway, back to Bumpy.
Back to Bumpy.
I
did not know that you made that much money off of heroin back in the day.
Oh, yeah. You know, everybody thinks that cocaine was the big seller. And that's because a hit of cocaine is more expensive than, you know, to buy, you know, a hit of heroin. But heroin is much, much more expensive than cocaine. I couldn't give you the dollar amounts anymore. Not that I ever knew, you know.
Allegedly.
But heroin was much, much more expensive.
Yeah, they were saying, I was reading on it, said they were saying 1 kilo was like 120 grand. But you could turn that 1 to 60 kilos. Right,
because what you're doing is you're cutting it, you know, and a crazy thing, you know, if somebody OD'd on heroin.
You get more business.
Yeah, everybody wanted to know where he got his stuff because that meant it was too pure. You know, if you shoot up straight heroin in your arms and you're used to this, you know, cut heroin, you know, you shoot up straight heroin, you're going to die. You're going to OD. So everybody would always try to find out where the dead guy had bought his heroin, you know.
And it's still like that to this day.
Oh yeah, it's still like that to this day. And you know, it's funny. Well, it's not funny, but heroin is like making a comeback, and it's off of the back of the opiates, of the Oxycontin and all of that, because the opiates, if you can't get them, you can go to heroin. You know, so heroin had died for a while until the opiate epidemic came.
Yeah.
What, about 10 years ago?
Yeah, about 10 years ago.
Yeah, and then, you know, then you find now we have a whole lot more heroin addicts all over again.
All over again.
Yeah.
They doing heroin again, and now they making the pills with the fentanyl in it. And
Well, the fentanyl stuff, that's, I don't even get that, because you know you're going to die off of that.
And they taking them.
You know?
But they say once it's in the system, it's over. Like you don't want the regular stuff anymore. I'm like, wow, I don't want nothing like that.
Nope, nor do I.
Yeah.
Nor do I. Yeah.
So all right, so you said Bumpy went in, so he didn't start into the heroin until he came out.
Bumpy never started in heroin.
Oh, he never.
Bumpy never started in heroin.
Oh, that's Frank Lucas making up his.
Yeah, but
That's right.
we're gonna get to Frank Lucas in a minute.
Frank Lucas in this story.
But I could see where people who were on the outside looking in would think so. Because by the time Bumpy got out, this last time, and Bumpy was set up. Bumpy was set up by a guy named Flash Walker.
Yeah.
Okay, Flash Walker, he had adopted Flash Walker like he was his son. You know, he had seen Flash Walker in a pool hall. At night with like raggedy clothes and you know, shoes that, you know, the soles were flapping, you know. And, you know, Bumpy will talk to anybody who would talk to him. And it's not that Bumpy talked a lot, but he listened a lot. And he really, really listens, which is one of the reasons why children loved him. Because adults don't really listen to children. They're like, oh, okay. Bumpy really listened to what you really wanted to do. That was one thing that Lynn Nottage had said about Bumpy. The film producer, big time film producer now, said that when she was young, she told Bumpy, you know, she wanted to be famous. And he said, well, what do you want to be famous about? She said, well, I like philosophy. So he bought her all these books from Socrates to Nietzsche to Aristotle. And she was like, I had no idea what to do with them. But the thing is I was so impressed because Bumpy listened to me, remembered what I liked, and went out and invested in my future. That's how Bumpy Johnson was. That's how he was. But he met Flash Walker. Walker was in a pool hall, Minton's. At a Minton's pool hall. And he was, you know, all raggedy and everything. And he was talking to Bumpy, and he said that, you know, he was a boxer. And Bumpy was like, well, what? And turned out Flash had a glass jaw. You know, and the thing is, you could be a boxer with a glass jaw if nobody finds out you have a glass jaw. But once you have it, that someone finds out.
It's over for him.
Yeah, because everybody he fights then is going to go straight for the jaw. And if you can defend like that, okay. But Flash was fast. Yeah. But, you know, he wasn't good at like, defense. Yeah, right, exactly. So he was no longer good at boxing. But Bumpy took a liking to him and said, well, I'll tell you what, you can sleep on my couch, because he was sleeping in the pool hall. And he said, well, you can sleep on my house, my couch for the night. So Flash, you know, and Bumpy assumed by the time he got up, Flash would be gone. Yeah. But Flash was up, and he was helping Mayme wash windows and making himself useful. So, and then he you know, then he left. Yeah. And then, you know, he came back that evening bringing chicken wings or something. And Bumpy knew it was like, can I stay at your house again, you know? So Bumpy let him stay over and, you know, let him have a job helping Mayme around the house for things like, you know, dusting the ceiling fan and, you know, things that it's hard for a woman to do. And he really took a liking to Flash. He really, really loved Flash. You know, like a son. Bumpy didn't have any sons, you know. And then Flash, remember what I was saying about people with a gift of gab?
Yeah.
How they're such good salesmen? Flash had been bugging Bumpy to let him run for him, run numbers for him, you know. And Bumpy said, you know, all right, we'll give you and he gave him like the shittiest circuit, you know.
Yeah.
People, you know which areas there's a lot of people pop, you know, and which, you know, this like, he took a circuit that was like no money. And within 3 weeks, it was the highest paying circuit in Bumpy's bank.
Yeah.
You know, so Bumpy was really impressed by
Yeah.
that. So he took Flash, you know, to buy clothes and, you know, turned him on to custom-made suits and everything.
Yeah.
So even though Flash was just a runner, and I mean, just a runner is not a small thing, you know, especially when you have the high, you know, routes, so circuits, you know. But Flash was too flashy for his own good. So that, you know, one time he went into a bar and he saw an undercover man who had busted him one time.
Yeah.
So he's talking crap to this guy, you know, and the bartender's looking at him like, you know, you about to really start some trouble. And the undercover man was like, he knew that Flash was working for Bumpy. So he didn't want any smoke, you know, but Flash kept pushing him, and finally they got into a fist fight. And the undercover dude had him, okay, and was on the bar and Bumpy walked in. Bumpy walked in and immediately grabbed the undercover dude and threw him up against the wall and was like, and the bartender said, no, Flash started it, Bumpy, Flash started it. Because he, you know, the thing is, this is an undercover man.
Yeah.
He's gonna come back. And he's gonna come back in a legal way, with the law way, you know. And so the bartender said, no, Flash started it. So, you know, Bumpy, you know, cooled down and everything. And he took Flash out the bar and said, don't ever do that again, you know. Because Flash would also make up stories about how big he was with Bumpy, you know.
Trying to brag to everybody.
Yeah, he did. But the thing was, he loved Bumpy. He really, really loved Bumpy. But what happened was, Bumpy had a granddaughter, Margaret, and a step-granddaughter, Ruth. And they didn't like Flash because Mayme was relying on Flash so much, and Bumpy was just adoring Flash, you know. And even though he took care of the girls like they were girls, you know, I'm not saying he was misogynist, but, you know, back then, you know, men were men and women were women, and they were supposed to stay in their place. Okay, we're talking about the 60s. No, at this point, we're talking about the 50s.
Okay.
All right. And one day, Margaret, his granddaughter, said to Bumpy, you know, Granddaddy, Flash was looking at me funny, and I think he was looking at me while I was undressing. And then Ruth said, he did that to me too, Bumpy. He was looking at me up and down, and I know that he was looking at me like he wanted to do something to me. And Bumpy was like, no. And Mayme was like, you girls are lying. You know you girls are lying. You just lying. And Margaret was like, no, Granddaddy, I'm telling you. He was looking at me in such a way, it made me feel so embarrassed. I ran out the room. And so now Bumpy is like furious.
Yeah.
He's furious. So he goes out looking for Flash. Well, Flash is coming out the Hotel Teresa on 125th Street, where everybody, you know, who was anybody, hung out. And Flash was coming out with two of his friends. And Bumpy's car pulled up. And Flash was happy to see him. But Bumpy just grabbed him and started pummeling on him. I mean, beat him down to the ground, literally, to the ground, and was stomping on him. And Mayme had taken a cab. And, you know, she knew where to go. And she was like, Bumpy, no, Bumpy, no. And she got in front of Bumpy.
Yeah.
And that's the only way that,
Stop him.
Bumpy stopped, And Flash, kept saying that he wanted to talk to Bumpy and explain his side of things because he really didn't do anything. And Bumpy wouldn't talk to him. Bumpy wouldn't even talk to him. Mayme later told me that she thinks that the reason why Bumpy didn't talk to him is because Bumpy thought maybe Ruth and Margaret really were lying, and he had beat up this kid for nothing, this kid that he loved, and he felt guilty about it. But then people started saying that he needed to take care of Flash.
Yeah.
Because Flash was going around talking too much, to the point that Dick Smalls, who owned Smalls Paradise, he was like an older guy that everybody looked up to. He wasn't a gangster himself, but he knew where everything was. He was a good resource man, And he brought Bumpy to his house and he said, you need to take care of Flash now, because the word on the street is that Flash is going to set you up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Every time.
Mm-hmm. Bumpy said, yeah, I'm going to take care of him. And Smalls was like, no, man, you need to take care of him now. You need to take care of him now. Well, when Bumpy went home that night, Mayme told him that she had the daughter of a friend over. And the girl was sitting on the couch, drinking tea and eating, but seemed like really, really nervous. And then when she got up to leave, she bust out crying. And she said, Miss Mayme, I'm so sorry. But, she was Flash's girlfriend. They didn't know that, She said, I'm so sorry, but Flash gave me this. And it was a packet of heroin. And he said for me to stash it, in the pillows of the couch. So when Mayme told him that, Bumpy knew that, okay, he got to go now. But again, it was too late. And police picked him up. Yeah. See, now the thing is, this is why people, remember I said people on the outside thought that Bumpy was a heroin dealer? Bumpy was banking numbers, makes a lot of money. Not as much money as heroin, okay? All right. So, but Bumpy had his finger in everybody's business.
Gotcha.
If you wanted to do business in Harlem, you had to pay Bumpy a bit. Okay.
So I don't have the heroin, but if you selling heroin in my neighborhood, you got to kick back.
That's right. It was the kickbacks. If you wanted to do anything in Harlem, if you wanted to open a speakeasy in Harlem, and everybody had speakeasies in Harlem.
I see.
You had to kick back, to Bumpy. Well, so that's why it looked like Bumpy was getting heroin money.
Yeah.
Because they saw all the heroin dealers were giving him money, and they were thinking that he was financing them. He wasn't, except one time. But they never even caught up the time. Mayme was the one that told me about the time.
Yeah.
About someone came and said with a handwritten note to Mayme, give him this much money out of the stash. And Mayme did it. Yeah. But that was the only time that Bumpy had financed somebody. Oh, and that was an old time friend of Bumpy's. But anyway, it was too late. Frank had set him up with a guy who had got busted for heroin. And Flash had convinced him to say that he had gotten it from Bumpy. Okay. Now, Bumpy knew where he had got it from. Okay. And he was telling the cops. The cops wanted to make a deal with Bumpy because they considered Bumpy to be small time. Yeah. Remember, he's from Harlem. If he turned over the Italians that were financing, that really were financing the heroin dealers in Harlem and around the city, they would let him go. But Bumpy wouldn't tell. And Bumpy got 20 years.
20 years.
Bumpy got 20 years. And he fought that case. Because he said, I've done a lot of things, and I've always owned up to my stuff. If I stabbed somebody, yeah, all right, I stabbed them, you caught me. If I shot somebody, yeah, I shot them, you caught me. If I burglarized somebody, yeah, he said, but the only thing, he was not going to cop to that deal because he did not want the people in Harlem to think that he was a heroin dealer. He did not. He did not. Because he saw how heroin was
doing everybody.
Yeah. You know, people were going around like zombies.
I think everybody think he was a big heroin.
And then the show that they have
they like
on, that he's a big heroin dealer. Oh, that's just sad. That's just sad. You know, and then when Bumpy got out, he was out for a little while. And then he was picked up for something. And he just did not want to go back to prison. So he led them on a car chase. And up on Harlem River Drive to what's the no, FDR, Franklin, FDR highway, and they finally, caught up with him and caught him. And Frank Lucas said that they caught him on a heroin deal. Yeah, this wasn't true. It was a cocaine deal. See, and back then, the people in Harlem that was using cocaine were the entertainers. Everybody was cokey, as they called it. It was an expensive high, and they used to say, well, yeah, he's cokey. That was the phrase that they used, And so he got busted, for that. And when he died, he was still fighting the case. He was still fighting the case.
That's great.
But yeah.
So how did Frank wind up trying to intertwine?
Man, okay, so let's talk about Frank Lucas. Let's talk about Frank Lucas. Frank Lucas. Bumpy was from South Carolina. Okay, Mayme is from North Carolina. Frank Lucas was from North Carolina. And he came up to Harlem while Bumpy was away for that last time, that heroin deal, which is one of the reasons why people think that Bumpy was dealing heroin. But again, I'ma say it again. Anything that Bumpy did, if he was caught, he owned up. He was like, F it, yeah, I did it, And why wouldn't he own up to that? I mean, he got 20 years anyway.
Exactly.
Why wouldn't he own up to that? He did not want to be,
have his name
painted with that brush. So Lucas came up while Bumpy was in prison, for that bit. And, of course, he always heard Bumpy and wanted to meet Bumpy when he came out. And so when Bumpy came out, a parade.
Yeah.
Yes, we held a parade in Harlem for the release of Bumpy Johnson. Because the funny thing is Harlem at that time did not believe that Bumpy was dealing heroin.
Yeah.
And that's the sad thing, that it's written and filmed in so many ways that yes, he was a heroin dealer because that's what he went to prison for.
Yeah.
But the people in Harlem knew that was one thing that Bumpy was not going to do. Because the Italians wanted Bumpy to deal for them because they knew that nobody could push it as hard as Bumpy would. But Bumpy wouldn't do it. Bumpy would not do it. So we had a parade, when he came out and everything. And immediately, Frank Lucas wanted to cozy up to Bumpy.
Yeah.
But Bumpy, he was leery of him. Now I'm getting this from Mayme, because at this time I was not around what was going on.
Okay.
Mayme said that Bumpy never fully trusted him. And Frank said that he was Bumpy's driver Well, no, he may have driven Bumpy to. Bumpy loved the racetrack, by the way.
Might have took him on a trip or two.
To the racetrack.
The racetrack.
Because he loved the racetrack. Belmont racetrack. Oh man, he loved Belmont racetrack. Bumpy was a gambler. I mean, we didn't even go into that. But anyway, yes. Bumpy gambled on pool, on poker. I mean, he was a gambler.
I think gangster and gamble just go together.
I think so too. I really, really do. You know, he had a running poker game up at the Hotel Teresa.
Yeah, he said it running.
But that's for another story. Okay. Where Finley comes in too, Finley Hoskins, okay? Because Finley ran the game for him.
Gotcha.
Okay, but anyway, so Frank may have driven Bumpy to, to the racetrack a couple of times, Mayme said, but Bumpy never even let Frank up in his house, and this is one thing that will attest to that. The first interview that Frank Lucas himself gave about Bumpy Johnson, the person and Frank would drive it around, and Frank pointed to a house and said, "Yeah, that's where my boss lived." Well, no, he didn't. He never lived over there. Yeah. He never lived over there. He lived on 126th Street, and then in Lenox Terrace. Yeah. But he never lived at that building that the dude, pointed to. So he never even knew where Bumpy lived because Bumpy didn't trust him, okay? But then after Bumpy died, because Bumpy died while he was still fighting
the coke charge.
Yeah, the coke charge, right. And so they knew it was a drug charge. Frank believed it was a heroin, I do believe that he really did believe that, I will say that for Frank Lucas. I don't think he was lying, but he was wrong. It was a coke charge. I mean, if you look it up in the New York City archives, that's what the charge was, okay? But Frank knew enough about Bumpy
to make it.
Well, Frank went to Frank went to prison, and when he came out, he was in a restaurant talking to somebody, and regaling them with all these stories about Harlem and how tight he was with Bumpy, and there was a reporter there or a writer from New York Magazine, and he was in the next booth, and so he said, "Well, I was listening to you. I hope you don't mind." And Frank was like, "No, I don't mind." And he said, "Well, I would love to interview you and talk to you about, your exploits in Harlem." So Frank said, "Yeah." And they had this big story in New York Magazine about what a big time heroin dealer Frank was and how he inherited his kingdom from Bumpy Johnson. Now the thing is, and this is where we messed up. Mm-hmm. Everybody in Harlem who read that magazine piece laughed. Yeah. It was like, "Oh, Frank is all lying again." You could tell his mouth was moving. He was lying, And everybody thought it was a joke. But then people, the white folks,
looking in.
Right, read that and said, "We could make a movie out of this." And there we have American Gangster. And that's how we have Mayme saying, "Karen," because she never called me KK. Bumpy would call me Miss KK. But Mayme always called me Karen. She said, "Karen, it's time we write the book." Because they wanted, including me, I wanted to write the book when, what was the first movie that came out? Yes, when Hoodlum came out. Oh, John Henry Clark was so upset with that. He said, when those white people that's doing wrong, when they're called mobsters or gangsters or racketeers. But when it's a black man, they call it a hoodlum.
The hoodlums.
Oh, Dr. John Henry Clark was so pissed about that.
And if for those of you that don't know about the book, Harlem Godfather, great book. I read it in 2 days. Great book. You go and get it. I'm going to send you the link to go get it. Miss Karen Quinones wrote it with Mayme, his actual wife.
94 years old at the time.
94 years old.
94 years
actual
old.
Wife, like, this is the real story.
Yes.
This is the real story.
You are now tuned into the Anonymous Source podcast.